So I think I'm going to get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to start by noting that this webinar is being recorded. We're going to share the slides and recording following the event. We've also enabled AI Companion, which is basically like a note taker. So it will catch you up in case you missed something that was being said or you had to step out for a minute. I am Rachel Smith. I'm a regional planner and the grant manager for the Municipal Waste Reduction Branch. I've been with MassDEP since March 2019, and I've been working on the SMRP program ever since. Today, I am facilitating this webinar with my co-host, Michaela Guglielmi, who is going to be letting people in that come in late, monitoring the chat, answering questions as we go along. We also have some polls, so she'll be launching those polls. And then I have presentations from other staff that I'm going to introduce shortly. So first, let me just go over a few housekeeping and logistics. This is the same slide that we recycle almost every presentation that we do here at MassDEP. So chances are that you've already seen it 100 times, but I'm quickly going to review it again. You're all currently muted. We have specific times throughout the webinar where we're going to break and ask questions. And at that time, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you to ask your question. You can also use the chat feature and then ask questions throughout the webinar. And we have people monitoring that. And also we will chat about them at the breaks as well. If you haven't already, please rename yourself so that we know who you are and where you're from. That will help during the Q&A. And then finally, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you're just joining, we are recording this webinar. We will be emailing it out, posting our slides to the website in a few days. We do have a holiday on Monday, so if it's not shared by Friday, I think, middle of next week. We've also enabled AI Companion. Just will help you in case you miss something during the conversation. So, as you probably heard, there are a lot of new members to the MassDEP team this year. We're up to 9 staff in the Municipal Waste Reduction Branch, and today you're going to hear from 5 of us that are working most closely with the grants. So, by now you all know me, Rachel Smith, and I'm going to start the webinar with a brief introduction about SMRP. Before turning it over to each of the staff that are working on specific grants. I'll also close out the presentation today, and I'm going to talk about what I'm referring to as our open project proposals, which are those larger scale proposals for waste reduction, organics capacity, and household hazardous waste facilities. We did award 1 household hazardous waste facility grant last year. We haven't offered the other categories since 2019, so I'm really glad to have these back. And hope that you can stick around to the end to hear about these as well. Becky Ferguson's going to go on after me. She's going to review the minimum eligibility requirements, which include the annual recycling and solid waste survey, the annual RDP spending report, and our annual notification of the town's buy recycled policy. She'll also review the grant for the food waste carts this year. Michaela Guglielmi will discuss our grant for drop-off equipment, which for this year includes both universal waste sheds and reuse swap sheds. Ron Cochran is going to go over the grant for pay-as-you-throw program funds, and there are a variety of funding opportunities for pay-as-you-throw. It remains one of our favorite grants that we offer. And finally, Gail Sowiter-Garin will review the regional small-scale grants for regional entities, as well as the updated recycling dividends program or RDP, which we updated in this cycle for 2024, and it's available to all municipalities. So we anticipate about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for this webinar. We have plenty of time for questions. We're going to pause for breaks throughout, and we hope it can be a good discussion. So most of you know this already, but I just want to set the stage and make sure we have context for the grant program that we're going to be talking about today. So the Sustainable Material Recovery Program, also known as SMRP, was created through the Green Communities Act and MassDEP regulations that qualified 6 municipal waste combustors to earn waste energy credits, also known as WECs, under the state's Renewable Portfolio Standard. And under that same statute, the waste to energy plants are required to give 50% of revenue earned from the sale of these credits back to MassDEP, which is then put in a trust to fund our recycling programs. So the SMRP program is in its 15th year, and the WEC funds both staff and all of our grant programs. The SMRP grant is one that has one program, but it has several categories that fall underneath it. We have 6 individual categories this year, and we will be reviewing each one today. The technical assistance grant I've included in here, it's also part of SMRP. It differs in the fact that it is a rolling grant opportunity. So municipalities can apply at any time throughout the year. It's also not direct funding, but rather in-kind technical assistance provided by your MAC. But this will be important if you're thinking about one of the pay-as-you-throw grants that we'll talk about later. This slide shows the most recent few years of our SMRP grants. You can see that we've steadily increased our funding over time. Last year was our largest grant award package in a long time, and that's a great thing. But for the current year, we anticipate a budget closer to 2022. Obviously, it's an estimate. The actual awards and the funding are going to depend on a number of things, including the number of applications and the type of applications we receive, as well as just how our budget is doing at that time. But I wanted to be as transparent as possible, just so you have an idea what you might expect. The budget's just one aspect of our program, but there are many other considerations when evaluating our grants. So here are some things that we look at. First, will the project or grant advance the goals and objectives of MassDEP's Solid Waste Master Plan? So according to that plan, we need to reduce trash tonnage by 30% over the next decade, which is approximately 2 million tons. It identifies many strategies and priorities that we could implement to help us get there. We also look at the program data and measure the results. So that's why the recycling and solid waste survey is so important. This data literally helps us determine how best to fund our programs and what initiatives might have the biggest impact. Environmental justice communities, well, the RDP application identifies a subset of RDP EJ munis. Gail's going to discuss this later, but this is a factor that's considered during the evaluation process for all of our SMRP grants. Sorry, my light just went out because it's motion censored. And then finally, we consider our past grant awards as well, and including RDP funds and what their use has been or their planned use for municipalities spending them. So now you know the basics. I'm going to turn this over to Becky Ferguson. Many of you have already had some email correspondence with her, maybe over the past few months as you submitted some of the grant requirements. So I'll mute myself and let Becky introduce herself and review the next set of slides.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. As Rachel said, I'm Becky Ferguson. I started with MassDEP, the municipal waste team in November, and I'm really excited to be part of this year's grant program. I am going to talk about the minimum eligibility requirements for submitting SMRP grant applications. There are 3 things that we ask you submit in February every year. They are your recycling and solid waste survey, the RDP spending report, and from the previous year. And then the third thing is a submittal of an annual notification to your staff of your town or city's buy recycled policy. If you didn't make these deadlines in February, that is fine. You're still eligible to apply for grants, but you will lose 1 RDP point, which could potentially impact the amount of funds your municipality receives. Many of you are familiar with these requirements, so I'll try to be brief. The survey and the spending report have always been a requirement for the SMRP grant program. And the reason that we ask for these in advance before the grants actually open up is to allow time to compile, review, and do quality checks of the data. And also so we can do a timely review of RDP eligibility and points like Rachel was talking about earlier. On a larger scale, I think it's really important to understand that the data, specifically from the survey, is used to evaluate and track our statewide progress towards the Massachusetts Solid Waste Master Plan goals, which is to reduce waste going into our landfills and incinerators. So it's not happening in a bubble. It really feeds into sort of a bigger picture of what's happening across the state. The third item that we ask you to submit in February is the annual notification of your city or town's buy recycled policy. This is the third year we've asked for this early. That extra time just helps us review the policies and request revisions if necessary. We also just hope that by requiring this earlier, cities and towns will take to heart the importance of having and implementing their buy recycled policy, as opposed to just sort of, checking a box at the last minute for a grant requirement. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the buy recycled policies in a few minutes, but thanks to everyone who got these in early. That was great. We really appreciate the effort. If you want to go to the next slide. We've heard from a number of municipalities in the past that it's difficult to submit the spending report based on a calendar year spending rather than fiscal year spending. And we've discussed changing this requirement so that it is based on fiscal year. What that may require is a different deadline. So if we did that, there could be a spending report deadline in like late summer or fall, and then a February deadline for the survey and the buy recycle policy, and then another deadline for the grant submittal, which seems kind of like a lot. So we're really interested in hearing from you, and we're going to do a quick survey now and get your thoughts on this. And Michaela, if you want to go ahead and do that, that'd be great.
Can everybody see the poll?
Yep.
And yeah, I'll read it out loud. To municipalities and are currently required to report on their RDP grant spending based on calendar year. However, they typically manage their internal accounts based on fiscal year. So which option would you prefer moving forward?
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would the annual report change to fiscal as well? Because that's going to determine my answer.
No, that would stay on the calendar year.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, almost half. I'll give another few seconds. And if you can't see the poll, you can make it bigger, like just by expanding the screen, because it's a lot of text. So, all right, I'm gonna end it and share the results.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. That's really interesting and helpful. It looks like most people would want a fiscal year schedule, but it's kind of a split. So we'll certainly keep all of that in mind moving forward and keep you posted on how we're going to do that in the future. So if you want to go to the next slide. After, so once the grants open in the spring and the February deadlines are passed, you will go into the retrack program, which is our online grant and data portal. And there's a minimum eligibility requirements form or page in there that needs to be filled out before you can start to apply for the grants. You'll see on the right side of the screen here what that looks like in retrack, and it's basically just check boxes. And so there are 4 check boxes, and they are for the annual buy recycled policy notification, municipal recycling data reporting, waste ban compliance reporting, and other compliance issues. Again, if you didn't submit these by the deadline, that's okay. You can still do it. If you had already submitted your buy recycled policy, you will see that we have already uploaded it for you. But if you hadn't done it by the deadline, you'll have to upload that yourself. So I will go into each of these items briefly. And I'll start with sort of the last three on the list. The recycling data reporting checkbox just certifies that you completed the last 2 years of the solid waste survey, and that was due in February. If you have not done that yet, there's still time to do it. You can complete the surveys and retrack. It entails collecting some data from your city or town. But your local, if you're new to this, your local municipal assistance coordinator can definitely help with any of these items and help you sort of complete that task. The next checkbox is regarding waistband compliance. And this question is to certify that your municipality is adhering to the Massachusetts recycling regulations by having active recycling programs in both municipal buildings and schools, or that you would be able to implement these programs within 30 days if you received a grant award. And then finally, we ask that you certify that your city or town doesn't have any other outstanding MassDEP compliance issues. This doesn't necessarily have to do with the solid waste in your town, but it could be related to air or water quality compliance issues. And again, these are all just check boxes. And once you've done them all, you can move on to apply for start your application process. The last item on that page is the notification of your buy recycled policy. MassDEP implemented this requirement just because of how it's important for municipalities to have recycled content purchasing policy on file, but then also that they remind their employees about it on an annual basis, especially those staff with purchasing power. And our efforts, just on a bigger scale, or kind of the big picture, is our efforts to buy products with recycled content is really what closes the loop on our waste reduction efforts and our recycling efforts. It really creates markets for products, and it's important that we do this statewide. Just as a quick review of what's required in this notification, that it's an annual memo or email that's sent out to staff. It should come from an administrator or mayor or town CEO, and the memo should include some language about why the policy is important. So it could be some of the stuff I've already said. It could say something like, in recognition of the need to make more efficient use of our natural resources, or to create markets for the materials that we collect when we recycle. We have lots of examples on our website of that language. So there's a link on this page you can go to and find that language. The annual notification also needs to include attached or inserted into the memo the actual policy that is in your town, so that the wording of the actual policy, and it could be a policy or a bylaw or an ordinance, but it must be enacted by a decision-making authority of your municipality, like the mayor or the board of selectmen. Whatever it is, it should be officially sanctioned or voted on, and if possible, on record with your town or city, say within the clerk's office. Again, you can find great examples of policies and memos on our website. And although a lot of people have great policies that they are actively enforcing and adhering to, we continue to see a number of municipalities with policies that are 20 or 30 years old. If you want to, yeah. Or may just consist of one sentence, or are actually not really a policy, or haven't been voted on or approved on by the town. So we encourage everyone to update these policies. And then we've also really been encouraging folks to, if they're updating their policies, to consider adopting an environmental preferred purchasing policy, or an EPP. And some towns have done this, which is great. An EPP policy takes the buy recycled policy kind of one step further by laying out guidelines for both purchasing items with recycled content, but also including guidelines for conserving natural resources, reducing waste, prioritizing reuse. We are really happy, again, to share models and language of these types of policies. In an effort to encourage municipalities to update outdated or inadequate biorecycle policies, you may have heard us considering making this a requirement that municipalities adopt an EP policy in the future as a grant eligibility. This would likely replace the biorecycle policy. And again, this is an item we'd really love to hear from you all on and your opinions about it. So we're going to launch another poll. And Michaela, if you want to take over, that would be great.
All right. So municipalities are currently required to have a biorecycle policy on file, but many of these are dated and very limited. MassDEP will be changing the requirement in the future so that municipalities must adopt a broader, sustainable purchasing or environmentally preferable purchasing policy. Do you foresee a problem with this for your municipality? All right, about half of us have answered. A few more seconds. All right, so looks like
Okay.
most people aren't really sure, yeah.
Okay. Again, super helpful. Thank you for that. So we will again sort of take that in consideration, but what our plan is right now is that we will be implementing an EPP requirement for future grant eligibility, that this would be effective in grant year 2026. So that gives everyone 2 years to work on it. MassDEP will provide guidance, templates, language, and it will again replace the notification to buy recycled policy requirement. And then folks who think that this will be really hard or just recently passed a buy recycled policy are really just encouraged to contact us, contact their Max and or the Boston staff, and we'll try to work it through. But as of now, that's our plan going forward. I want to go to the next slide. And then this is just a reminder that the Operational Services Division has an environmentally preferable products index, which makes it really easy to purchase items or services aligned with biorecycled policies or environmental purchasing policies. You can see everything here on this list. You can buy heating oil or copiers or vehicle parts, or just office supplies and paper products. And it would be really simple to just have procurement staff have this bookmarked on their page, and all of these contracts are state contracts and pre-vetted and pre-approved. So that's just a friendly reminder. And that wraps up our minimum eligibility section. I am going to go, so once you've completed all that, you're ready to apply for your grant and get those applications going. And I am going to start talking about those grants now. And I will start with a food waste collection cart grant. This grant is to help municipalities establish and grow curbside food waste programs. The grant funds go towards purchasing curbside carts for residents or businesses that are participating in a municipally funded curbside collection or source separated food waste program. The grant can go towards establishing a new program or a pilot program, but it can also go towards expanding existing programs. The grant details are really similar to last year, and the exception is that the label reimbursement is going up $1, and the maximum award is going from 100,000 to 110,000. And then there's some additional funds for pilot programs up to $10,000. There's the link on the slide goes to all the details of the grant. And if you want more details, and I think, the one sort of thing to note on the food waste cart grants is that we do require grantees to submit an implementation plan that outlines funding resources or funding sources and a program description and sort of a timeline for implementation. The other grants don't have this, but we do require it for this one just to make sure that the program can be successfully implemented and that your municipal municipality is ready to sort of thought through all those pieces, your municipal assistance coordinator can definitely help with an implementation plan as well. And I think that's it for what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to hand it over to Michaela to talk about drop-off equipment. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky. All right, I'll be talking about the universal waste sheds and the reuse swap sheds. So for the universal waste shed, it's a collection container for mercury containing items like thermostats, thermometers, fluorescent lamps, batteries. There's a photo on the right of a past grantee. You can see they have that funded by a grant from DEP sticker on the shed, which we require. This is a reimbursement for up to $5,000. And the state contract FAC 110 is linked on the slide for processors and collectors of the equipment or the materials. And also linked is the details document for the drop-off sheds. And it's mentioned on the document, but I wanted to highlight that municipalities that are served by a municipal waste combustor, such as Wheelabrator or Covanta, are not eligible for this grant because there's a requirement of these combustors that they have a material separation plan in place. And in that plan, they're supposed to give a universal waste shed to their participating municipalities. So if you are one of these communities, make sure you're taking advantage of that program if you haven't already. And if you're not sure, you can check with me or check with your MAC after the webinar. And this is also a one-time shed. So if you've been awarded a shed in the past 10 years, you would not be eligible. So now we'll go to the drop-off of reuse swap shops. This is back for the first time since 2020, and we're really excited to bring this option back because we really want to be encouraging municipalities and residents to think of reuse first instead of recycling or disposal. And there are also RDP points available for municipalities that have reuse swap shops. So it's a shop for collection of home goods, toys, books, all things like that. Again, another photo on the right of a past grantee. This is for reimbursement for up to $6,000. And there's materials available on the FAC 113 state contract linked. And then the details document is also linked, and it is the same details document as the universal waste shed. Like the universal waste shed, it's also a one-time grant. If you've been awarded for the past 10 years, you're not eligible. And if you are interested, you could apply for both of those sheds. And that's it for me. So now I'm going to be turning it over to Ron Cochran, who's taking over the PAYT program and the PAYT grant.
Thanks, Michaela. And again, welcome everyone today. My name is Ron Cochran. I joined MassDEP not too long ago in February. I'll be presenting on the pay-as-you-throw grant. And I guess why are they giving such a big grant to the new guy? Well, there's good reason. I previously was employed with the city of Malden, where we have been a pay-as-you-throw community since 2008, and I also was lucky to work on an upgrade to that. So we'll talk about some of that during this section, but I do have some experience there, and I'd love to take questions after. Next slide. So why pay-as-you-throw? It's the single most effective tool that we have in basically practicing the reduce, reuse, recycle behaviors. Some may be familiar with the concept of pay-as-you-throw, but basically what it is it's a solid waste program where residents pay a per unit fee for disposal of household trash, but you're not charged a direct fee for recycling. So this creates a financial incentive for individuals to reduce their waste and practice those reduce, reuse, recycle behaviors more out. So basically just throwing out less trash as a result. For us here at MassDEP, pay-as-you-throw remains a top priority. It's the single most effective tool that we've seen for solid waste reduction. It's also equitable. It's like your utilities, it's just like electricity or water, things that you pay directly for. that's what pay-as-you-throw is to household waste. It has environmental benefits. It reduces trash sent to the landfills and incinerators and reduces emissions and produces less waste overall. And you're also in good company here in Massachusetts. Nearly half of the state already has some form of a pay-as-you-throw program. You avoid savings, or you have savings, avoiding costs at disposal. And then lastly, it creates a way to insulate city budgets from rising hauler costs without increasing other taxes. So a lot of us, we may have only access to the general fund, and this is a way to kind of pull those costs out and really directly associate what the costs are to the city, to the service itself. Next slide. So we basically put everybody on a map, and what this is some of us call it the map of pride, but this is based on 2022 solid waste data that you folks have submitted already. And it's meant to visually show how much trash communities in Mass generate. And if you look closely, there is a special section or crosshairs, I guess you'd call it, and that shows the cross-section of what communities have adopted pay-as-you-throw. And you'll notice there is definitely a correlation here, and the numbers are pretty staggering. In general, municipalities with pay-as-you-throw programs average 25 to 50% less trash than municipalities that don't have it. And this has stayed consistent over the years, and it really makes up a big difference when you add it all up. Next. So we like to address kind of everybody here, you know, folks that have pay-as-you-throw already, as well as those that are brand new, maybe looking to adopt it. So for those that have it already, you know, think about ways that you can sustain the program. Is your trash tonnage going up, down, or is it leveling? Just always try to keep an eye out on what the program is doing. We love pay-as-you-throw programs, but there's always ways to improve programs. So keep your eye out on that. And with that said, there are grants available to upgrade existing programs. And if you're looking to adopt pay-as-you-throw for the first time, we'd like to ask you to come away from this meeting, you know, with some education that you can bring back to your stakeholders. So first, educate yourself on it. We have plenty of information on our website, case studies, you know, a lot deeper dive into this topic. And then run the numbers to see what the impact is on both the budget and environmentally for your community. It's pretty easy to run the numbers because our haulers give us tonnage that we, you know, that we throw out. So it's pretty, and we know how many, usually most of us know how many households we serve. So running those numbers are pretty easy. You can have a real tangible way of seeing what the impact will be. And we like to say always be somewhere on the pay-as-you-throw curve. So whether or not this is the first time you're learning about it, or you're really, really close to getting your city or town to adopt pay-as-you-throw, we want to see everybody on that, because ultimate goal for us would be to have all cities and towns in Massachusetts in some form of pay-as-you-throw. Next slide, please. So this is a complicated topic. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot to think about. And we know that you can sometimes feel kind of lost in all this information. And with that said, we do have what is known as the Pay-as-you-throw Technical Assistance Grant. And what it is, it's 80 hours of dedicated in-kind technical assistance from your MAC. You may have heard that term mentioned before. It stands for your Municipal Assistance Coordinator, who's kind of like your regional person that is responsible for different. Massachusetts is cut up in different areas, and each area has a MAC. So you would then, by applying for the Pay-as-you-throw Technical Assistance Grant, you would have the ability to work with this MAC to help you provide background information on comparable communities to yours, set up visits to other pay-as-you-throw communities to see how they work, do some real financial analysis, doing the actual calculations, attend meetings and public forums, provide support for public outreach, maybe give you some ideas on, you know, social media posts or in-print documentation, And I think last and probably most importantly would be to actually help you develop the implementation plan itself. And as you'll see in a further slide, there's going to be a lot of choices on what type of implementation you do, and that's what this grant can help you with, the technical assistance. Next slide, please. So what is the Pay-As-You-Throw grant program? It is available for Pay-As-You-Throw programs, new as well as upgrades. The funding is dependent on the number of households served in your community with a maximum of $300,000. And grant funds may be used for the cost of bags, carts that are less than or equal to 35 gallons. It also covers outreach and education materials, potentially even a program coordinator, and then other approved expenses. And again, all these details can be found in depth on our website. Next slide, please. Just gonna kind of summarize. There's a lot of information here, but basically it's three main categories. If you're a new if your community is looking to adopt Pay-As-You-Throw new and you're a drop-off community, it's up to $10 per household. And you can see that going down the line here, new curbside programs have a variety. Again, it's basically, this is something that you're going to have to work with your MAC and the members of your, all your stakeholders in your community to figure out what fits best. And as we've seen with other communities, no one size fits all. And that's why our grant is so flexible. And again, these slides will be available after so you can see all the details of what fits best for your community. Next slide, please. So if you are getting ready to apply, as we mentioned before, that technical assistance grant, we think it's so good that we actually require you to do it before you actually submit an application for as a Pay-As-You-Throw grant. So if you're really serious about this and you're interested in going all the way with Pay-As-You-Throw, you must have submitted and been approved for a technical assistance grant. And it's really worth it. You'll thank yourself for doing it, and a lot of the details will be fleshed out during that process. And also applicants that are full Pay-As-You-Throw, all bags, tags, stickers, must have a municipal bylaw requiring private haulers to provide integrated trash and recycling services. And essentially what that does is it's a way to kind of level the playing field. We don't want to see haulers come in and try to charge you additional fees for recycling when the city or town is doing one thing. We don't want a private hauler to do another. So that's why we put that requirement in there. Next. And this is a lot of information, we know it, but we want to give you a chance to dive a little deeper. So what we're going to do is spin off a couple of specialized webinars along these lines in this topic. First one's going to be in May. The date is TBD right now, but we'll be getting this information out to you real soon. And what we're going to do in the May webinar is dive really deep into this topic, probably about a 1-hour session. It's going to look a lot like this webinar. But we'll break all those topics out in detail and describe them. And then in the fall, for communities that already have Pay-As-You-Throw, they're looking to either tune up their program or maybe think about applying for an upgrade grant. We're going to run that in the fall. And that is strategically because we know that's around the time a lot of folks are talking budget with their stakeholders. So that's why we thought it was a good spot there. So again, stay tuned for these webinars, these announcements. Okay. And then any questions from here?
Yeah, so we can take questions for anybody that's presented so far. So myself, Becky, Michaela, Ron. Michaela, since you're, co-facilitator here, if you can, unmute people that are raising their hands, or we could go through some of the questions that have come up in the chat, if you don't mind reading those.
Yeah, one in the chat that I think we might have missed or didn't reply to was, I'm just scrolling back through.
And I
does it
did-
need, okay. One question is, does it need to be 100% municipally funded, or can it be a combo of resident funded and municipally funded. I think this was for food waste at the
Yeah, that's
time.
Yeah, I think that's for food waste. I don't know if Rachel, you want to address that.
The grant guidelines say municipally funded. I think, if you look at the application, there is a question about funding and finance. And I know, some municipalities like will charge a fee for the households that participate. So I think my response to any of these questions is look at the application, write your proposal. We're interested in hearing, what municipalities want to do. We're willing to be, flexible, think outside the box. This is obviously like a priority for us, is to get food waste and organics out of the waste stream. But it is a competitive grant. So, there's a lot of considerations we look at. And I think, to be fully transparent, the proposals that are fully municipally funded are going to be scored higher than those that, might not be. But again, it just kind of depends on how many applications we get and what the responses to the specific questions are.
Right.
And I think somebody did mention, like, kind of non sequitur here, that they couldn't click on the links on the slides, and that's because this is a live presentation. But when we'll send out the slide deck after this, and it will be a PDF, and you will be able to click on like all the hyperlinks throughout the slides as well. So don't worry if you missed something.
All right. There was also a question about pay T. I really want to start this, but the town is pushing back, saying people will increase their recycling habits with unacceptable items, contaminating our recycling pool. Any opinions or thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a common thing that we definitely see that. And there's no question that you will get some scofflaws, right, that are trying to reduce the amount of that they're putting in there, and they're just sort of saying it's what we like to call wish cycling, right? So you throw everything away just so you can have a smaller footprint. But really, that just comes down to education. We have we actually have a lot of materials here at MassDEP that help communities to increase their recycling education efforts. And really, it's a community by community effort. But I think that's what we like to say is like increase the education as opposed to throwing out the concept to begin with. It's not a great reason not to do it. Ultimately, the savings and the reduction in the amount of waste that goes in the stream, it ultimately far outweighs non-compliance at a small level.
Thank you. Yeah. And kind of along with that, there was discussion about the enforcement to ensure that households aren't contaminating. There was already kind of a response to that.
Yeah, one of the other things too that some communities we've seen have done is if you are getting, and we'll talk about RDP coming up later, but cities and towns are getting recycling dividends funds, and one of the allowable expenses is on education materials. And we found a personal experience that I had is we were able to use RDP funds to go out and educate our residents on both good recycling practices as well as trash preparation, for lack of better terminology. So these funds that are available to you can really help with those efforts, we feel.
Great. And then one more, I think this was also for pay T. Could this be used along with existing curbside collection, such as collecting the bags within the existing carts? I don't know if she was on like a specific slide.
Yeah, I think I know. I think I'd like more clarification on that, because it sounds like what they might be saying is something we already do. Are we eligible for funds for something we already do? It sounds like a little bit of a nuanced question, which I'd love to take offline, or if anybody else on the team maybe wants to try it.
It's about pay T bags and carts. Let's just enter in the chat.
Okay, about pay as you throw. Let's see.
So I
Yeah.
think they're saying they don't have pay as you throw, but they have carts and they want to know if they can implement a pay-T program with the bags in the carts.
Well,
And
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it really, again, we'd have to see what the details were. This is kind of the classic thing that you flesh out with your municipal assistance coordinator. But if it's what it sounds like, it's possible that it falls into that category of first barrel or first cart free and then overflow bags, which is part of an upgrade program. Again, I do encourage you to work with your MAC to find out where you stand in there. And who knows, maybe as you look and you apply for that technical assistance grant, you find that your existing program has potential to be really jacked up into like the next level. So again, we would really encourage you to do that. And also, this is a great question to dive deeper in on that May webinar too.
I realize that we also have the Q&A. There's 2 questions in there. Is this grant called the calendar year 2024? Yes.
Spring
And then
2024.
If an organics program is private, paid for by residents, can towns include those numbers in their reporting, or does the program have to run through the municipality?
Was that about like the recycling and solid waste reporting?
I think so.
Can you repeat it maybe?
Yeah, if an organics program is private, paid for by residents, can towns include those numbers in their reporting, or does the program have to run through the municipality?
I believe that for their recycling and solid waste program survey, there's a question about food waste tonnage like collected, and that's for collected through the municipality. So you wouldn't be getting data for like private subscription. That's the same with our trash and our recycling. Like the data that's reported by you all through the recycling and solid waste survey, it's meant to represent your municipal program only, not any of like the private hauler tonnages. I hope that makes sense.
Should we switch to polls? I think,
Yeah, so
yeah.
thought we do something a little fun here. We're gonna have a pop quiz. Get ready for it. Michaela's gonna launch a couple polls.
All right, so the first one, greasy pizza boxes, are they recyclable or not?
And Michaela, if you can like read the percentage results to me afterwards, because I can't see the live polls
Oh,
right
okay.
now. Thank you.
Remember, there was a controversy earlier as to whether or not there was a glob of cheese in that photo, and the answer is no, that is just grease.
Just grief. Are we ready?
Great. So looks like 58% said true and 43 said false.
So you guys need to pay more attention to Recycle Smart. The answer is that empty pizza boxes can be recycled, even if they're greasy. Just remove the food and like the actual pizza and any plastic or that paper before placing it in the recycling bin. Grease is really okay. The paper recycling mills have assured us that this does not interfere with the paper making process. It's one of the things that people, I think, get confused about all the time. So that's why we wanted to test you here. And we have another quiz.
Okay, so everything that is labeled recyclable can go in a residential recycling bin, true or false? All right, most of us have answered this correctly. Only 8% said true and 92% said false.
Perfect. So our messaging with the Recycle Smart campaign has been focused on the shape of the item, especially when it comes to plastics. So the number does not mean anything. A better indicator is the shape. If it's a bottle, jar, jug, or tub, it's okay to put in your household recycling bin. The recycling facilities are designed to sort plastic containers. They can't handle like the odd shaped plastics. So some like random toys or like plastic furniture, you know, like very small items, plastic items less than 2 inches, that wouldn't work if it's like flat, like a credit card. And any plastics that are flexible, like bags and wrap, those wouldn't work as well. But bottle, jar, jug, or tub. And if in doubt, check the Recyclepedia if you want to take more quizzes. This link here is really fun. All right, so now we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled programming. I am going to step away for 1 minute while my co-host kind of steps into my seat. So just pardon the 2-second interruption here.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Hi, everybody. My name is Gail Swarter-Garin, and I've been a regional planner with MassDEP for the last 6 months. And prior to that, I was a Municipal Assistance Coordinator, or MAC, for Northeast 2 for about 3 years. So it's good to see a lot of familiar faces. So I'm going to review the Regional Small Scale Initiative Grant for the Spring 2024 grant round first. There really are no changes from last year, and this grant will provide funding for the purchase of designated materials and services that will sustain existing regional waste reduction programs or facilitate new low-cost initiatives. Please always refer to the grant guidelines on our webpage, as it will provide more details about the requirements. So the Regional Small Scale Initiatives Grant is open to regional groups only. The amount of funding dispersed is based on population served, and it has the same spending guidelines as the Recycling Dividends Program, or RDP. Eligibility is limited to those regional groups with a mission of solid waste reduction or management. This slide shows the potential award amount and how it's calculated based on population. Grantees will purchase products based on the approved spending categories and then request reimbursement. Typical purchases include recycled copy paper, public area recycling bins, and e-waste recycling. The population brackets and amounts of funds have not changed from last year. Okay, and now the moment you've all been waiting for, the Recycling Dividends Program, or RDP. I'm going to be reviewing all the options available for each RDP category and changes to RDP for the Spring 2024 grant round. I cannot stress this enough. Please refer to the RDP grant details document on MassDEP's webpage as you start filling out your grant application. Not only will it provide more details about the changes and requirements, but it will also answer most of the questions you may come across while filling out your application. If you go through the RDP details document in its entirety, as you're working on your grant application, it could also give you ideas of which waste reduction programs you may want to implement next year. The time to start thinking about that is now. I've worked in your positions in a municipality just like yours, and I've always found the RDP details document would be essential to gaining the most points possible for your municipality. It also makes filling out the grant application easier and gives you ideas about implementing future waste reduction programs in your municipality that can earn you more points, and more points equals more money. Money that can further your waste reduction goals. I'll get off my soapbox now and get to the details. First, I want to give you a refresher. The Recycling Dividends Program provides payments to municipalities that have implemented specific programs and policies proven to maximize reuse, recycling, and waste reduction. There are 11 categories this year, and each carries a point value ranging from 1 to 5. Municipalities that earn at least 1 point out of the 23 available are eligible for RDP grant funding. The point values vary based on the demonstrated impact of waste diversion, essentially functioning as a best practices framework. Payment brackets are based on the number of households served by the municipal trash program. And earning points means all programs claimed must be implemented or in effect during the 2024 fiscal year from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. Please remember that your municipal webpage postings that help you earn these RDP points must remain there year-round to inform your residents about solid waste reduction programs and events. Next slide, please. There are two levels of funding for RDP awards, basic and advanced. Now let's talk about the point value, how the point values are calculated. Basic level is for municipalities that earn 1 to 9 points. Advanced level is for municipalities that earn 10 points or more. Payment brackets based on the number of households served by the municipal solid waste program establish the value for each point within each level. These payment brackets are expected to change in the Spring 25 cycle. Basic level points are 30% less than advanced level points, and awards for a narrow subset of environmental justice populations as defined next will automatically be calculated at the advanced bracket rate, even if the total points earned are less than 10 points. Next slide. Environmental justice or EJ population data are derived from the 2020 American Community Survey and the 2020 Decennial Census based on demographic criteria developed by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. A small subset of environmental justice populations will be granted special consideration in the Recycling Dividends program. This subset refers to as RDP EJ populations, is defined as those communities in which 45% or more of their residents live in an EJ census block group that meets criteria for either minority population and income components, or minority population, income, and English isolation components, as defined in this slide and in the RDP details document. MassDEP will provide funding at the advanced level to this subset of EJ communities. So they're funded at full point value, no matter how many points they earn. Next slide. This year's EJ municipalities are the same 51 municipalities as last year. We do review annually as things change based on census data, and we confirm that these municipalities meet the RDP EJ definition. If you have questions about your specific municipality or the definitions of environmental justice, you can reach out to the Mass Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Office of Environmental Justice and Equity. Next slide. Here are the 11 RDP categories for Spring 24. They're arranged in alphabetical order on this slide, as well as in the grant guidelines. This year, we've removed the category for yard waste. Yard waste has been a waste-banned material since 1992, and all municipalities are required to have a program in place to keep yard waste out of the waste stream. Next, I'll describe each category in more detail. Okay. Please note that changes as well as new additions will be highlighted in red in this slide presentation. Please always refer to the grant guidelines on our webpage for more details. Changes and new additions in the details document are highlighted in yellow on our website. So they're red here. There were 3 changes to the bulky items category. The point value for collecting at least 3 bulky items was reduced from 2 points to 1. Mattresses are no longer an option to count toward your 3 bulky items. They will come into play in the charm category. The option to collect 4 bulky waste items annually at no cost before a fee applies has been eliminated. For this RDP section, bulky items collected can be disposed of or recycled. Remember that your bulky item fee schedule must be posted on the municipal website, as you will be required to provide the direct link to the fee schedule in the grant application. Broken or incorrect links may result in a loss of points. Next slide. So a Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, or CHARM, is a location where materials listed are collected for recycling or reuse. A CHARM must be in your municipality or a bordering community, with the exception made for rural areas. Rural municipalities can be within a 10-mile radius of an open CHARM. Your CHARM must collect 8 items out of 16. Important to note is that for Spring24 RDP applications, all municipalities must list the collection locations on their municipal website, as well as on Recycle Smart's Beyond the Bin directory to get points in the CHARM category. There will be more on this on the next slide. Another major change is that individual items may be collected at different locations within the same municipality. So for example, in addition to having your CHARM at the public works yard or the transfer station, you can collect books or textiles at your schools, or mercury containing items or household batteries could be collected at the health department. These would all count. We changed the point value for mattresses here. When the mattress ban was in place, with the mattress ban in place now, there are numerous options for mattress recycling. Mattresses are now recognized as one single item instead of 3 toward the 8 items required in the CHARM category. For household batteries to count as an item toward the CHARM, you must include lithium-ion batteries in your collection. Christmas lights, shredded paper, marine and agricultural wrap collections once a year at an alternative location will still qualify. For the Spring25 RDP application, municipalities will be required to collect mercury products in order to get points in the CHARM RDP section. So keep this in mind for next year. Next slide. So Beyond the Bin is part of our Recycle Smart MA initiative and is a directory for the general public to find drop-off locations for materials that can't go in the household recycling bin. Listing on Beyond the Bin is already required for businesses that are grantees through our Recycling Business Development Grant Program. New this spring is also a requirement for municipalities seeking RDP grant credit in the CHARM category. We have a video tutorial and instructional guide to help you add a new listing to Beyond the Bin. And I believe Michaela will be adding those into the chat box. This information is also included in the RDP details document. If you have more than 10 locations, please reach out to us directly at the email listed on this slide. Next slide, please. There are 3 sections within the curbside recycling regulations category. Municipalities can only receive points in one of 3 sections. MassDEP expects to update this category in the Spring25 grant application. So new this year is that comprehensive hauler regulations for all generators and all permitted haulers are now combined in one section. If your municipality actively enforces comprehensive hauler regulations, you could qualify for 3 points. You could qualify for 1 if you adopt these regulations. As usual, all regulations must meet these 3 requirements: require bundled service and pricing for residential generators, require bundled service for commercial generators, and mandatory recycling of all generators by bylaw or ordinance, regulation, or policy. The option to receive a higher number of points specifically for the adoption of MassDEP's model comprehensive hauler regulations has been eliminated. Next, please. There are no changes to the section on enforced hauler regulations for residential generators only and all permitted haulers. Your municipality must enforce hauler regulations that require that private haulers provide bundled service to all residential generators at a rate that reflects the cost of both services. You could qualify for 3 points for active enforcement. As always, you must meet these 3 requirements. Municipality should offer drop-off and/or private hauler prescription services only. So this is not applicable for municipal curbside collection municipalities. Your required bundle service and pricing for residential generators, and require mandatory recycling of all generators by bylaw or ordinance, regulation, or policy. Next, please. Finally, to be eligible for the enforced mandatory and quality recycling requirements category, your municipality must provide residential curbside collection of recyclables. If your municipality enforces mandatory and or quality recyclables with dedicated staff at the curb for a minimum of 19 hours per week, you could qualify for 3 points. If it's 10 hours per week, you could get 1 point. If your hauler enforces mandatory and or quality recyclables via your hauler contract or municipal standard operating procedures, you could qualify for 1 point. Next, please. Not much has changed in the category for diversity, equity, and inclusion in recycling programs. This category is meant to increase awareness and recycling access to underserved communities and areas. Our Recycle Smart webpage is a great resource and has templates and translations in multiple languages. Your municipality must complete a minimum of 2 activities from the 12 provided to qualify for 1 point. There are 2 things to note here. Overflow bags sold at a discounted price for low-income residents or those experiencing other hardships are only available to municipalities that have an active, full or modified pay-as-you-throw program in place. And when claiming activities related to the translation of materials, the use of Google Translate on your municipal website does not count. For other activities, you must provide a direct link to the materials on your website or school website when prompted. A link to the Recycle Smart MA org does not qualify. Next slide. If your municipality organizes, hosts, or funds comprehensive household hazardous waste events, you could be eligible for points. If you meet the requirements, 6 or more events per year could give you 2 points, and 2 or more events per year could give you 1 point. Please note that a single municipality hosting 6 or more HHW collection events per year is considered permanent and would qualify for those points. This permanent HHW collection facility must be listed on MassDEP's HHW webpage. There are a few points to highlight here. A municipal official or contracted vendor must register any HHW event through MassDEP's online notification system. And I believe Michaela will be putting that link in the chat. Directing residents to privately owned facilities does not qualify as a household hazardous waste event. Events listed must have taken place between fiscal year 24 from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, or the applicant risks losing 1 points in this category. Next, please. There are 3 sections within the source separated organics category. Municipalities may choose only 1 option overall, and MassDEP expects to update this section in the Spring 25 RDP grant application. The first is curbside collection. If source-separated food waste was collected from all households served by the municipal trash program, you could qualify for 3 points. Food waste collected curbside at least weekly from households participating in a municipally funded or subsidized private prescription collection program could qualify for 2 points. If your municipality selected a vendor and negotiated a per household rate for curbside collection of food waste through a public procurement process, you could qualify for 1. Organics collected weekly through a municipally funded pilot with a minimum of 400 households could qualify for 1. Please note that a project is considered a pilot for a maximum of 3 years. After that, you can't claim any points for a pilot. Next slide. The next 2 source-separated organics options remain the same. Source-separated food waste was collected at a municipality-owned collection center, and the municipality offered home compost bins to residents at cost or less, with an effective promotion and outreach education would qualify for 2 points. And if just home compost bins were sold at cost or less with effective promotion and outreach, you would qualify for one. Next slide, please. There are no changes to the recycling center access category. If your municipality allows haulers to tip recyclables there, you could qualify for 2 points. If your recycling center is open to local businesses, non-residents, or residents not served by the municipal program, you could qualify for 1 point. Next, please. There are 7 options with 11 opportunities to earn points within the reuse program section. Municipalities may only choose 1 option overall. MassDEP expects to update this section in the Spring 25 RDP grant application. The reuse programs category has some minor changes. Miniature alcohol bottles, or nibs, have been added as an option under the single-use plastics ban. And under deconstruction activities, a project is considered a pilot for a maximum of 3 years. Next slide. There were no changes to the remaining categories. Having community repair and zero waste events, a library of things and dishwashers and reusable dishware in schools can really engage your residents and help make waste reduction a normalized activity in their lives. Next slide. There are no changes in the solid waste reduction category. MassDEP expects to update this section in the Spring 25 grant application as well. Both full and modified or hybrid pay-as-you-throw, if at least 50% of eligible households in your municipal trash program must participate to earn these points. For non-pay-T programs, an overflow bag, sticker, tag, or punch card, as applicable, must be purchased for excess trash in order to qualify. I want to note that a full pay-T program earns the highest number of RDP points in any category of 5 points. As Ron had said earlier, MassDEP has found that pay-as-you-throw is the most effective mechanism for encouraging waste reduction at the municipal level. Solid waste tonnage can be reduced by 25 to 50% through a combination of increased recycling and diversion to reuse, repair, donation, and composting. Next slide. The textile recovery category remains the same. You need to complete 6 activities from 13 options to earn 1 point. Examples of activities include placing permanent textile collection bins at a municipal drop-off center, transfer station, library, or other non-school public facility, and posting textile recovery information and locations on community boards, municipal websites, and social media channels. Please note that for the Spring 25 RDP application, the Textile Recovery Initiatives section will be removed. MassDEP plans to require a municipal textile recovery program as part of the Spring 25 RDP grant application. This could include having a permanent municipal collection bin, school textile recycling bin, and/or curbside collection. Next slide. For waste prevention, outreach, and education, you must complete a minimum of 5 of the 22 activities on the list of assorted educational and promotional efforts in the guidelines. The waste prevention, outreach, and education category is unchanged. Examples of educational and promotional activities that you can engage in include publishing a press release, sending a reverse telephone call twice a year about your solid waste reduction programs, having a dedicated web page containing information on your solid waste reduction programs. For the Spring 25 RDP application, municipalities will be required to include MassDEP's Beyond the Bin search directory, recyclesmartma.org, and the RecycleSmart Recyclopedia widget on their website to get points in the Waste Prevention, Outreach, and Education RDP section. We are requiring this so that we can provide uniform messaging across the state. So that will be required for Spring 25. Next slide, please. So why go through this grant application process? You want money to spend on waste reduction activities. Now think about how you want to spend it. Please note that spending allowances for both RDP and regional small-scale grants are the same. Also, refer to your RDP approved spending categories document for a list of eligible expenses. This is a very detailed document that has a list of everything you can spend your RDP funds on. If you're unsure if something is an eligible expense, please reach out to your MAC first. And please note that no special spending requests will be considered. RDP funds do not have to be spent in the same fiscal year awarded and may be carried over to future years and saved to fund a larger eligible project or expense. However, RDP funds are intended to be invested in waste reduction activities and not preserved for a rainy day fund. We also recommend that you have a dedicated account or revolving fund for RDP funds. This will be a requirement in the Spring25 grant cycle. I'll give you more information on the next slide. Next, please. For grant year 25, we will require municipalities to have a dedicated account for RDP funds. The intent is to make it easier for you to access and spend this money. MassDEP will provide guidance and is planning to host a webinar on this topic with the Department of Revenue. If you find it difficult to meet this requirement, please reach out to your MAC or MassDEP Boston staff. Next slide.
Do you want to do the poll?
Now, right after this.
Okay.
Right. As illustrated on the chart, close to $8 million was carried over into 2024. So there's still a significant amount of unspent RDP funding out there. There we go. So in 2023, $3 million was spent and still $8 million was carried over. So we want you to spend. We highly recommend putting those funds to good use to further your waste reduction goals. If you're saving for a specific purpose, please discuss this with your MAC so that we're all on the same page. We really want municipalities to invest in their solid waste programs. As always, thanks for your feedback. It helps us make appropriate changes to our grant offerings. A lot of thought goes into any program change, and we hope that the changes we've made will benefit your municipality. You can expect more to come in 2025. All right, now we can launch our poll about dedicated account.
All right, so municipalities are not currently required to maintain a dedicated account for their RDP grant funding. To encourage and facilitate RDP spending, MassDEP will be changing the requirements in the future to require a dedicated account. Do you foresee a problem with this for your municipality? All right. A few more kind of trickling in. So it looks like 67% said it's not a problem. They already use a dedicated account. 5% said somewhat of a problem. 0% said this would be a major problem, so that's good to hear. And 28% were not sure or didn't have a preference.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michaela. Now I'm going to turn this over to Rachel, who will be discussing our open project proposals.
All right, so I'm back. Thanks for listening. We're almost done with this webinar. I have a few slides to review on our open project proposals, which are grant opportunities for these large scale projects related to waste reduction, organics capacity building, and the establishment of a permanent household waste facility. But first, I'm just really curious as to whether anyone on this call is considering applying to one of those grants. So Michaela, if you could launch our last poll.
All right, so yes, please indicate if your municipality or regional district is considering applying for one of the open project proposals in this grant cycle. You can choose more than one. So if you're thinking about multiple options. All right, we'll give it more seconds. All right, so about 20% are considering applying for the waste reduction projects, 9% for organics capacity projects, 6% for a permanent household hazardous waste facility, and the majority, 73%, are not sure.
Okay, well, that's great. I think it'd be great if you, even if you don't plan on applying this year, to listen in and see what we have to offer. I'm really excited to talk about this because it's kind of back. It's not new, but it's back. Gail, could you do next slide, please? You probably have to click on it and then, yep, so like click the mouse and then move the arrow. Yes, thank you. So the first category is, they're all in one application, but the first category under this proposal is the waste reduction projects. And waste production projects are intended to expand the scope or effectiveness of reuse, recycling, composting, or household hazardous waste management programs. The last time we offered this was back in 2019. We've increased the award amount. So now the minimum funding request is $20,000 rather than it was $10,000 before. The maximum is $100,000. Generally, these should be completed within 2 years of the award. They involve a scope of work and a budget and really working closely with MassDEP staff along the way. For all of these grants, we encourage potential applicants to reach out to MassDEP staff regarding your project ideas during the application process. And this is because we don't want you to spend a lot of time on something if it's really not what we're looking for. The details document, which is going to come up in a few slides, it does list examples of appropriate projects. So I encourage you to review that as well. And then to discuss your ideas, you can reach out to Kathy Mirza for this one. Next slide, please. For organics capacity projects, the process is very similar, though these grant awards may range up to $250,000. Because they are larger awards, the guidelines have some more constraints about what the money should be spent on. So there's guidelines for how much you can spend on capital cost versus consultants and contractors, things like that. And again, if you have an idea in mind, you can reach out to John Fisher for this one. Next slide. Finally, the third option in this grant application is for the establishment of a permanent household hazardous waste collection facility. We offered this grant last year. The details are the same. The award amount ranges from $50,000 for an individual municipality to $250,000 for a regional facility. Gail is currently working on one of these projects that was awarded last year. So if you have any thoughts or questions about this applying for this specific grant, you can reach out to her. Next slide. This is one application that covers all three of these categories. And because of the competitiveness of this grant, applicants can really only apply to one. As with our other SMRP grants, eligible applicants must be a municipality or a regional entity. In the past, we did allow nonprofits to apply for these grants, but now that we have expanded the Reduce, Reuse, and Repair microgrant to award up to $10,000, and we also have the Recycling Business Development grants, both of which are open to nonprofits. We really wanted to focus on municipalities for SMRP. The online application itself is just a few questions, but applicants are required to attach a mandatory project proposal. And that's basically a fillable form. It's linked here and it's available on MassDEP's website. It has instructions for submitting, a 4 to 8 page project proposal. It will include a budget narrative, a work plan, letters of support, and all the details that we might need. And the document linked here includes a summary for each category that I just talked about as well. So I want to pause here again, some time for questions. And then after this, I just have a very few more slides, just summarizing everything at the end. So if any questions have come up for Gail or myself.
Yeah, let's start with some of them are kind of being answered. Would a shared regional hauler regulatory enforcement person be considered for one of those grants?
Shared
Like waste reduction?
regional hauler enforcement person. Shared regional hauler. Like, I think that has to do with curbside regulations and the category when haulers enforce recycling contamination or mandatory recycling. I don't see why. No. Okay, what does it have to do with?
No, for like if there's a private hauler requirement that they provide bundled service at no extra cost. You know, there's reporting requirements and then, you know, going after the haulers that are not in compliance. That's a heavy lift for a lot of boards of health. So was wondering if you know, if say, for instance, if the SSRC, and definitely not this year because I'm busy with the hazardous waste, but if we applied for a regional, to hire a regional person that could go from town to town and help, you know, bug the haulers for the reporting and work with them if they're not compliant.
Oh, I see.
Instead of having the board of health doesn't have time to do it.
To hire
You know,
their
'cause
own
it does-
person to do it.
It takes a lot of time to, you know, chase some of these people down
I think
and bring them into compliance.
if the hours are, so they're still spending, you know, like 10 hours a week in the town, it's okay if they work in multiple towns. I think that's what the question is.
And could I chime in, Rachel?
No, this
Yeah.
is, no, this is not
Well,
for
that's
on the
not-
ground.
I
This is for
think she
private
means
hauler
a waste,
and
like a waste reduction grant, Claire, perhaps. This is Kathy. I'm not sure if that's
Yeah.
what you're thinking of, like a larger grant that might serve a region, just to clarify.
Right, for private hauler enforcement.
We could certainly talk offline about that. So yes, I mean, if it's a write your own proposal for a waste reduction grant
Great.
that's serving multiple communities, and it would go through that evaluation process as Rachel described, but by all means, if it's addressing waste reduction on some kind of scale, then we can speak one-on-one for sure. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kathy and Rachel.
Apologies, I was like totally thinking RDP question related there. So thanks, Kathy, for
All
taking it.
right.
Will school composting be in the organic section at some point in the future?
I think that's a great idea, and we do know that we want to beef up the organics section in RDP. So you know, stay tuned. We do expect changes in spring 25.
Let's see. A lot of these have already kind of been answered. Adding NIPS to plastic bans for this year's application is extremely tough for towns that must go to town meeting. What can we do?
It's not a requirement. I think there was a confusion. So right now, towns can ask for reuse points in RDP if they have bans on 2 single-use plastic items. And we've listed those plastic items. It was plastic bags, utensils, straws, things like that. We included NIPS as an option because more municipalities are now also banning NIPS. So we're not saying you have to do it, but we're saying, oh, if you do have NIPS, you can get credit for it in this reuse category.
Are there any more up here? I'm trying to find them now. There was like 2 about textiles. With the textile ban in place, has the tonnage collected via contracted vendors be considered endpoints in the future. I'm not exactly sure if,
Well, I guess the question is, Gail, did you talk about the textile will not be that its own category next year in the future? So we're still kind of working out how we're going to involve textiles in RDP. Right now we do ask textile tonnage for the recycling and solid waste survey. But that's again kind of focused on through the municipal program. So I don't really have an answer to your question about whether we would ask for private textile collection tonnage as a way, you know, to support something in RDP. I don't think so, but
yeah,
Spring25 will kind of show more, I guess, what we're looking for.
it kind of related to that I think on the survey, we were always encouraged to gather waste from textile bins and our communities overall, not just the municipal ones. Because that actually came up for me too, like realizing that I think we specifically say municipal property, but maybe we should be including tonnage on commercial property as well on our recycling. So just something to
Yeah,
think
so it might be
about.
more related to like the recycling and solid waste survey. And that's how we analyze that data.
Yeah. Getting some new ones coming. Any other questions that someone wants to say out loud?
It's a long webinar, so I'm sure people have questions after the fact. But I guess I'll go through, should I just move on, Michaela?
Yeah, I think we're good to move on.
Next slide, please.
I actually had a question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I put it in the, oops, I just lost my screen. Thank you as always. You folks just are rock stars in my book. Maybe this is not new and I just didn't read it last year, but on the pay as you throw, the full pay as you throw, 50% of eligible households have to serve by the program, have to participate. Is that new?
It is not new, but it is being highlighted, like it is we are specifically mentioning it because it was in the guidelines last year, but I think a lot of people kind of missed it or didn't. We're trying to be more direct about it.
Okay, and can you clarify that? So for you know, my towns that have my town transfer stations, which don't serve 100% of the population, but everybody who uses a transfer station has to participate in the pay as you throw program. I'm trying to wrap my head around what this means.
When you are in the RDP, actually, I think the question is in the recycling solid waste survey. It asked, you know, how many households participate, and in the RDP application, it will ask like how many participate in pay as you throw. And I think you know, you can talk with us or a MAC. The best way to kind of gather that information is, you know, transfer station stickers. Like, okay, how many transfer station stickers, you know, do we have for drop off? I think that would be the easiest way. For the curbside, it's usually by carts. We can see, you know, how many 35-gallon carts have been distributed. So we're just trying to make it not difficult, but just, you know, more kind of fair, I guess, in a way, like just to try to get that information.
Okay, I'll follow up. Oh, Kathy wants
Yeah,
to say something.
can I jump in if I just want to help a little bit on that one because it can be a little complicated. I appreciate the question, Jan. There's so much happening in the chat. I did try to put an answer and I'm not sure if anyone saw it, but we probably could have been a little bit clearer, I think, maybe in our guidelines. So I appreciate the question. What we're trying to get at, what Rachel was referring to is The curbside programs primarily that offer more than one type of collection model. So there are some curbside programs that will allow for a pay-as-you-throw model or an annual fee to pick up everything. Or there are some curbside programs that have, say, 3 different cart sizes. In those scenarios, we want to be sure that the majority of households that participate in that municipality's offered program are choosing the pay-as-you-throw model to be considered pay-T, because the residents have choice. In a transfer station communities like many that you serve, if that's the only municipal program offered to residents, then we don't have that threshold requirement at this time. Does that make sense?
Excellent. Yeah,
and
just keep it that way. I like that answer.
It's something that folks have brought up about the future, I think partly because, just so folks know, that in some transfer station communities, participation rates, some are really strong and some are not very strong. And we want to do our best over time to try to ensure that the majority of people or everybody has access to recycling, and how can we get at that? So it could change in the future, but right now your transfer stations are good. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, so I just have a couple slides here. I just want to summarize. These are really important. Oh, that's okay. No. Back, please. All right. That's okay. These are just really important dates to remember. From now, you have about 9 weeks to get your applications in. Please do not wait until the last minute. They're due by June 12th at midnight. Staff spends, several weeks in the summer conducting our evaluations. We may reach out to you if we have a question about something or we need more information. But if all goes well, we expect to award the grants in the fall. So in the past, it's usually any time between like September and November. And all materials are posted on our grant webpage. Next slide. This is another slide with hyperlinks. Sorry if so many links can kind of give you a headache, but I just wanted to include it here. It has everybody's contact information. It links to all of the details documents. You'll get a copy of this slide deck in the next few days, and everything will be hyperlinked, so you don't have to worry about writing down all those links. And then next slide is just a quick promo for our Reduce, Reuse, and Repair microgrant. Applications for MassDEP's first round this year are now open. The application deadline is May 15th. Microgrants are up to $10,000, and they'll be awarded to projects that reduce waste generation and prolong the life of products through donation, rescue, reuse, and/or repair. It's open to for-profit and nonprofit organizations, regional authorities, municipalities, schools. They're all eligible to apply, as long as the project is based in Massachusetts and is expected to take about a year or less to complete. The guidelines are here. And that's it. We are done. So I just want to say good luck.
Rachel, this is Carrie. I don't
Yes.
want to interrupt you, but Phil Goddard from the town of Bourne has had his hand up for maybe a couple minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see any of the presenters I can't see any of the participants when I'm in.
No, that's okay.
general.
It popped up. So I just wanted to let you know before you closed out.
Sure.
Hello.
Michaela, can you unmute Phil, please?
Hey, this is just sort of a broader question for Kathy and the senior management at DEP. The Recycle Smart program is catching on more and more. We use it. The widget's great. There's a quiz on there. Our recycling committee actually made a display with little, what's the right answer, guess, and you open up a flap. I've sent it to you guys, and that's catching on the time. So it's all great. But general awareness of waste bans and Recycle Smart program from a macro level in consciousness of the public, is not maybe is where it could be. So I would just encourage the state to maybe, we've talked about this for many years, a statewide advertising PSA, some sort of, advertising to support our programs, because right now all that promotion's on the towns. So I don't know if you're doing that already, but I would encourage you to do that. And so that's one item. You don't need to answer that now, but just anything on a macro level to kind of support the messaging, whether it's at, sports events or something, you know what I'm talking about. The other is, while we all discourage wish cycling and we focus on quality in the recycling carts, I'm perplexed why people who have 2 carts continue to throw bottles and cans in the trash when they have a cart inches away.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, so it just drives me crazy. So I'm wondering if there's any research you could do with people who are doing the audits to find out, when they talk to people, are they only focusing on the recycling cart? I would really want to know, is it, well, I read something from an environmental organization that said recycling is a hoax, and that, plastic isn't recycled. And we've talked, the whole, we're fighting a lot of counter messages out there, as we all know, and you've talked about that. So why are they doing water bottles, especially aluminum cans? There's really just no reason at all to be throwing those in the trash when you have a curbside recycling program. So I just love to understand that a little bit more, and I'd love to maybe have DEP kind of see if you could do some research on that with all the resources you have to help us with messaging. Are people doing it because they don't care, they're lazy, or they heard some other message from an organization that they trust that says that it's all a hoax and it's all going to landfill anyway, I might as well throw it in the trash? I just don't know. It just drives me crazy. I'm sure the others on the call are in the same boat. But, when I go up and do wasteland inspections, I just, why? Just really heartbreaking.
I suspect, Phil, this is Kathy. I suspect it's maybe a little bit of all the above and perhaps even more. And every so often, the MassDEP has done a resident survey that we use a private consultant to do. And I think we're getting closer to that time to maybe do that again, particularly in this long moment of time where the mythology of what's not happening with our recyclables is really it's disinformation for people, frankly. So we want to get at that. Recycle Smart really is working hard at trying to get correct messaging out in a clever, interesting way. It does get a lot of traction when we see the metrics behind the scene and how many people actually go to Recycle Smart. New users, individual users beyond the bin is actually incredibly, it's, I think, the most highly used part of the platform, which is also part of why we are asking all communities to put information about their collection sites on Beyond the Bin, because it is used in the tens of thousands every single month. It's really impressive. So we do take to heart your feedback and really appreciate it, because you're doing the work on the ground, and we are taking lots of notes and care about your thoughts on this. So thank you for sharing. It's been a lot of terrific engagement today, and we will definitely take that back as we move forward and help the programs evolve. So thanks, everybody.
And Rachel, I don't want to bum you out. This is Terry again. Anna McCaffrey from the town of Chilmark asked a question. She's on Martha's Vineyard, so she's one of 6 municipalities there, but she's also part of the Martha's Vineyard Refuge District, which serves 4 of those communities. She wanted to clarify, did someone say that municipalities working together regionally can only choose to apply for one category from waste reduction, organics capacity, or household hazardous waste in the open projects category?
So if it's the regional entity is applying on behalf of all 4 of those communities, they can choose one. If like Chilmark wants to apply for their own thing, they can choose one of those 3. And their regional people can choose another one of those 3. And a 4th town can choose another one of those 3. But I guess the point is, it's 4 to 8 pages. It requires a budget, a project narrative, letters of support. I think it would be a lot of work for one group, whether that's a regional group or municipality, to apply for 3 separate of those things. 3 8-page proposals with budgets and letters of support and ideas. And it's just so competitive that it would be, it's just discouraged. So we didn't set it up this year that you could apply for more than one.
Okay, that's what I believe the answer was, but I didn't want to tackle that without you, the grant manager, clarifying
If
that.
she's unsure, like what it might fall in, you know, if they have an idea for a larger scale project and they're unsure of whether like, would this be like a waste reduction project or an organics capacity, like it has overlap, they can definitely reach out to the project managers for those and kind of, you know, talk it through about what might make more sense to apply for.
Thank you, Rachel.
Is there anything else? Any other questions, concerns? Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for everybody for attending today. I'm going to end this webinar. We will be in touch via email, everyone that attended, with materials from today. So thanks a lot and have a great day.